This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library.
Enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
On a gig the other day, and in the downtime, I got chatting to buddy Ryan, who was playing bass and is also a really accomplished sound guy. And knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about. And we had an interesting chat, I thought, because he was talking, he'd seen the video that I'd done on the reality of gigging, and I was reading an article from Hugh Price, I think, and he was talking basically from the perspective, I think of a slightly older school guy, where he was saying 80% of the sound is going to be coming from the guitar amp itself, and only really 20% needs to go through the front of house in sort of most medium-sized gigs or whatever. And Ryan had some thoughts based on that video that I'd made, and he was kind of asking about what is it like, because he was saying I'm not sure, I'm a bassist, I'm not sure what you guys are looking for in terms of tone. And I was watching Dann, Huff and Tom Bukovac talk, and one of the really interesting things they said, that Dann Huff was on a record with Eddie Van Halen, and all the engineer did was bring Eddie Van Halen down -5 dB in the mix, and it made such an impact. That's not actually changing your tone. And I think this is the point that the pros are really aware of, and maybe don't have to fight against as much as some of us, knobheads schlubbing it about doing your function gigs and stuff like that. I'm not being a diva about this or anything. It's just that if you want me to take a solo at any point, then I want that solo to be at a level where it kind of is complementary not only to the band, but where it's noticeable that the thing is happening. And if it's not, that's totally fine. Just don't ask me to take a solo, or don't have solos, or don't have guitar-based music. So this is a video kind of talking about some of that and some of the frustrations, because I think if any of you are in this situation, and you totally hear it from guys like Mick from that pedal show and various bits and pieces, where the silent stage is becoming a bit of a thing, but if nothing else, certainly the quieter stage. And this is one of the things where tone and volume are inherently linked, and in a way that I think maybe some people don't necessarily get what we're talking about, and it's kind of getting hard to fight your corner. But anyway, this is kind of my thoughts on this. So intro part here, the only thing that changed in the playing, so this is obviously in my bedroom, which is not exactly the same as like a live situation, but it does get the point across quite clearly, I think. The tone has not changed at all. Like, it's exactly the same tone. It's a modelling rig, right? It's going through Helix Native. All I've done is just move the fader down -5 dB so that in the mix it's 5 dB relatively quieter. It makes a huge difference to how like big the guitar sounds. I think also like perception wise, like how good the guitar sounds, how much of the dynamics you're hearing versus it like kind of just being like a little bit weedy and then coming across. And I think that is, in a microcosm, exactly what guitarists are concerned about when it comes to live sound too. And this is the thing that's really been like hammered home to me whenever I watch an Instagram video of like someone's like, these would be like players that are touring under their own names, their own projects, and it's a guitar focused thing. And you see like a video and it's like, I can hear drums, I can hear bass, the guitar in an instrumental guitar band, I can barely hear the guitar. What is going on? What's the issue here? Why do people hate the guitar so much that we can't have the guitar at volume? Now, what I would say is that when you hear a real pro guitarist that you know and is known for their great tone, two things generally will be the case. I think one is that there will be an amp on stage, mostly. And the second thing that I think you'll notice is that it's probably making the drums sound kind of, if not quiet, quieter. And that's the key difference that I've really noticed. So it's not necessarily about like, okay, well, Joe Bonamassa is like known for being loud, or Robin Ford, or Matt Schofield, or whatever. But it's also about them being loud enough relative to the other things around that it enables them to actually play dynamically, or not even like as an audience, like as we're hearing these things. It's like, well, I can actually hear when they've like dialed things back a bit. And that's where the subtlety actually is. And this is kind of the thing, like, we think of loud guitar, all that sort of stuff as being like this constant blaring type thing, which I guess sometimes it is, like if it's a 2-guitar band, or like if you're in a tiny pub. And I've played in bands like this, and it's like, I don't necessarily think it's always optimal to be super loud, and it's not the most pleasurable experience to play in sometimes. But whatever the volume the band is happening, I do think as a guitarist you have to be there in the mix. Otherwise, like, you might as well not be. And this is like the real key thing that I would try to hammer home. And I guess maybe have to fight this sometimes, but I think it depends on like the sort of gig. If it's a gig where you know that you're playing like 5-6 solos or whatever, I think the real key thing to take home is that when the vocal drops out, I think that the guitar solo volume should be at where that vocal was. Now, totally in all sorts of gigging situations, like you've been in situations where it's like, well, the vocal is the focal point. Obviously, that is why, well, especially if it's a singing gig, but at function gigs, that's the first thing that I try to do when I'm out gigging with my own band, or like doing sound for my own band, is make sure, like, if I stand out front, are the vocals clear? And that doesn't necessarily equally have to be much about EQing. So I was gigging with my wife, and she was like, it doesn't sound great. Like, the vocals is like, I can either not hear them or I can really hear them. And all I did really was kind of just move her up the dial like a few dB. And she was like, well, that sounds way different. What have you done? I was like, I just turned you up slightly louder. I think that's one of these things where we think so long and hard about like EQ and all these bits and pieces, but actually just balancing the levels kind of correctly. And what that also means as a guitarist is, like, when you're not taking a solo, and this is a key thing that I try to do, is try to bring your level down so that you're not being like aggressively loud during a vocal part. That's the thing for me, where I try to like be sensitive to this stuff. And if I'm not taking a solo, then I'm not going to be boosting like loads generally. it'll just be like, right, I need to just be at this level. So you keep your like rhythm and your clean tones at a level where they're sitting sort of like in the mix, and then hopefully if your sound guy doesn't have like a load of compression on your channel, when it comes to your solo, that lifts you to where you needed to be. It's a total balancing act, but I think this is kind of the thing where we were chatting, me and Ryan, where it's like some sound guys are going to kind of say that they're doing like active mixing, when sometimes actually they're maybe not. They're maybe like focusing on other things. Maybe they're not going to be aware of when like the solo is going to happen. So in that case, like even more important that the guitarist is handling the levels correctly, because otherwise, like, well, yeah, you could be either way too loud all the time, or it could be that your solos are, you know, getting boosted as well as the sound man boosting them. But if things are staying relatively consistent, and you don't have a massive compressor on your chain in like a digital sort of mixing kind of rig, then you can have it so that when time comes for you to solo and fill the space that was being occupied by the singer, that everyone kind of wins, because it's like, right, well now it's taken to that level where the guitar needs to be for me to hear it above the mix. But at the same time, you know, when they're not soloing, then that's not happening as well. So I think that to me is the most important thing to try and get across, that it's not just guitarists. Sometimes I know it's like if you're turning up to gigs with a Marshall or something like that and expecting it to work, then sometimes like I kind of get what people are talking about. But for me, I'm turning up in scenarios where it's like a deluxe reverb on 2 or 3. Like, it's not crazy, and I'm not trying to be the loudest guitarist ever. Or like even loud, like depending on the scenario, you are totally like, and my tone is not tied to volume in some cases, right? It's more tied to like, does it need some reinforcement? If I'm using an FRFR speaker, I can just turn it down or turn it up depending on how loud the drummer is going to be. These kind of factors. The tone part of it is consistent. The thing that changes is the volume, and then the thing that you realise is that the way we perceive tone is totally dependent on volume. And so your tone will never be right if you're never hearing yourself like at the level that you expect it to be in the mix. And I guess as a guitarist, that might be louder than other people perceive it, but I think that's kind of just a safe point, right? Where at least the bit that matters, because it's the bit that people are expecting you to take solo sometimes, where the vocal was is where that guitar should hit. I think that's a kind of safe thing. If it's beneath that, then you're going to feel a drop in energy, and the tone being whatever it is won't really matter. You know, the tone is the tone, is the playing good, all of that thing. None of those things really matter if you can't hear the guitar sufficiently enough to hear whether things are good or not. And that to me is the difficult part to try and get across to people. It's like, I've got mates that are maybe known for being like loud guitarists. It's like, well, actually, are they loud all the time? Maybe not. Or are they being loud when they're literally taking a solo and this is their point in the set where you've like hired someone to play guitar? Just, yeah, if there's a guitar and there's guitar solos in the set, I think that those volumes should be at where the vocalist was prior, and that when the vocalist comes back in, that energy kind of shifts back to the vocal, so you drop your volume back down as a guitarist. I think it seems simple, but actually, on the face of it, on a real gig, there's kind of so many competing things where it's like, well, is the guitarist sending like a 6 dB boost to get above to that level? Right, okay. Does the sound guy have a compressor on that chain which is going to stifle that so they don't actually get that boost? Is the sound man sometimes boosting for the solo, sometimes missing it? Like, it's a whole lot to compete with, right?